In the quiet town of Millfield, Ohio, where routines were inherited like last names and expectations weighed heavier than dreams, Iris Tmaine grew up learning how to be invisible in plain sight. Her father, Kenneth, was a man of rigid beliefs and measured words, the kind who believed life followed a strict order: work, reputation, family, and obedience. Her mother, Diane, enforced that order with a softer voice but sharper consequences. And then there was Paige Bright, charming, effortlessly adored. Paige didn't have to try to be seen. She simply existed, and the room bent toward her. Iris, on the other hand, learned early that approval was something you earned quietly, through perfect grades, polite silence, and never asking for too much. She became excellent at it. Top of her class, scholarships, teachers who praised her discipline. But none of it seemed to echo loudly enough at home. Compliments were brief, achievements expected. Paige's laughter filled the house. Iris's success barely made a sound. Still, she endured, telling herself that one day, leaving Milford would mean finally becoming someone beyond the shadow cast by her own family. That day came with a scholarship letter. It wasn't just an acceptance, it was an exit. The moment Iris stepped onto her college campus, something inside her shifted. The silence she carried for years began to crack. She spoke more, laughed, even, and then, unexpectedly, she met Marcus Ellison. Marcus wasn't just different from anyone her family would approve of. He was everything they wouldn't understand. Confident, thoughtful, sharp-witted, and unapologetically himself. He came from a world Iris had never been exposed to, and yet, with him, she felt something she had never felt before. Seen? Not as the quiet one, not as the responsible daughter, but as Iris, complex, curious, alive. Their connection wasn't instant fireworks, it was something deeper, steadier, built over late-night conversations, shared ambitions, and a mutual understanding of what it meant to fight for your place in the world. Marcus didn't just listen to her, he challenged her, encouraged her, believed in her in a way that felt almost unfamiliar. So when their relationship turned into something undeniable, Iris knew what it meant. It meant choosing. And that choice came crashing down the day she told her family. The call didn't last long. At first, there was silence. Then questions. Then tension so thick, it felt like the line might snap under it. Diane's voice, once calm, hardened into something unrecognizable. Kenneth barely spoke, but his disappointment filled every pause. And when Iris mentioned, Marcus really mentioned him, everything changed. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't hidden behind polite words. It was rejection. Clear, cold, immediate. Days later, the letter arrived. Not an email, not a call. A letter. Typed, formal, detached. Diane's words didn't ask Iris to reconsider. They demanded it. There was no room for discussion, no attempt at understanding. Just an ultimatum written in black and white. Leave Marcus, or lose your family. Completely, permanently. Iris read it once, then again. And something inside her, something that had been bending her whole life, finally refused to break. She didn't respond. Instead, she chose Marcus. Their wedding wasn't what most people would call grand. There were no rows of familiar faces, no childhood friends, no parents wiping away tears in the front row. It was small, intimate, real, and despite the absence of her family, Iris felt something unexpected that did not loss, but clarity. This was her life, and she had chosen it. Still, hope is a stubborn thing. After the wedding, Iris sent invitations. Photos, updates, small attempts to bridge what had been broken. Every envelope came back, unopened. Every card returned like it had never been sent. Even birthday wishes disappeared into silence. That was when she bought the blue folder. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a place to keep the returned mail. The unopened letters, the evidence that she had tried, but over time, it became something else. A record, a quiet witness to every moment her family chose absence over connection. Months turned into years. The silence didn't fade, it settled. And in that silence, Iris and Marcus built something from nothing. They started in a garage. Not metaphorically lit. 2 laptops, a folding table, and an idea that most people would have dismissed as too ambitious. Compliance Course wasn't supposed to succeed, at least not according to the odds. But Iris had spent her whole life proving expectations wrong. And Marcus had never believed in limits to begin with. The early years were brutal. Long nights, financial strain, doubt creeping in through every unpaid invoice and every rejected pitch. But they had something stronger than comfort. They had each other. And slowly, piece by piece, the company began to grow. Not overnight, not easily, but steadily. And through it all, the silence from Millfield remained unbroken. When Iris gave birth to twins Liam and Sophie, she hesitated before sending the announcement. Her hands lingered over the envelope longer than they should have. But hope, again, refused to die quietly. She sent it. Weeks passed. Nothing came back this time. But nothing came at all. No congratulations. No acknowledgement. Just absence. That night, Iris opened the blue folder again. She added a new entry. A returned letter this time, but something heavier. A moment missed. A line crossed. A silence that spoke louder than any rejection before it. 29 entries would eventually fill that folder. But she didn't know that yet. All she knew was this. The life she had built was real. The love she had chosen was real. And somewhere, far behind her, was a family who had chosen not to be part of it. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that one day, that same silence would break. Not with apology, not with regret, but with something far more calculated. And when it did, the blue folder would finally be opened for more than just remembrance. Success did not arrive with a single moment. It accumulated quietly, almost cautiously, as if even it didn't want to startle the life Iris and Marcus had built. What began in a cramped garage with secondhand chairs and borrowed confidence had, over 9 relentless years, transformed into something formidable. Compliance Course was no longer a risky idea, whispered between 2 exhausted partners at midnight. It was a rising force. Clients multiplied. Contracts grew larger. Investors started listening, then competing. And when the company finally went public, the number attached to their name, $44 million, felt less like a reward and more like a surreal echo of everything they had survived. But wealth doesn't just change your life. It reveals who was watching from a distance. It started subtly, a name appearing in an email subject line that hadn't existed in years. A social media notification from someone who had long ago chosen silence. Then came the messages, casual at first, almost carefully worded, as if testing the waters. Paige liked a photo of the twins. Diane viewed a story. Kenneth's name appeared on a missed call log. Though no voicemail followed, Iris didn't respond. Not yet. Because something in her recognized the pattern not from memory, but from instinct. This wasn't reconciliation. It was timing. And then she saw it. A screenshot. It came from a distant cousin she barely spoke to. Sent without explanation, as if the sender didn't want to be involved, but couldn't stay silent either. A family group chat. Names she knew. Conversations she had never been meant to see. Diane, we need to approach this carefully. She's successful now. We can't come off desperate. Paige, I can reach out first. She responds to me. Faster, Kenneth. We are still her family. She owes us a chance. Diane again. Not just a chance. She can help fix things. The house, the debts, everything. There it was, not love, not regret. Strategy. Iris stared at the screen longer than she expected to. Not because she was shocked, but because she wasn't. Somewhere deep down, she had already understood this truth long before it was written out in text bubbles. The silence hadn't been accidental, it had been conditional. And now, the conditions had changed. Marcus watched her as she locked her phone, his expression calm but knowing. You expected this? He asked gently. I think, Iris replied slowly, I've been expecting it for years. He didn't ask what she would do, because he knew her well enough to understand this wasn't about reaction. This was about resolution. The knock on the door came 2 weeks later. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, but it carried a weight that made time feel like it paused for just a second before Iris stood up. Marcus moved instinctively beside her, not in front, not behind, beside. When she opened the door, Diane stood there. Older, of course. Time had softened some edges and sharpened others. But her posture, straight, composed, controlled, was exactly the same. In her hand was a leather folder. Not sentimental. Not symbolic, practical. Transactional. Double quotes. Iris, Diane said, her voice steady, almost rehearsed. It's been a long time. There was no hug, no hesitation, no apology. Iris stepped aside. Come in. They sat across from each other like strangers negotiating something neither wanted to name. Marcus remained nearby, silent but present. And for a moment, the room filled with nothing but the quiet hum of everything that had never been said. Diane placed the folder on the table. I won't waste time. She began, opening it with precise movements. Your father and I have been dealing with some financial difficulties. The house has multiple mortgages. There are outstanding debts. Paige has had some complications as well. She slid a paper forward. Numbers, specific, calculated, $925,000. We're not asking for charity, Diane continued. This is family support. Something that, frankly, should not need to be explained. Not once did she say, I'm sorry. Not once did she ask, how are you? Iris looked at the paper. Then she closed the folder, slowly, carefully, and stood up. I'll be right back, she said. Diane frowned slightly, confused by the lack of immediate response, but said nothing as Iris walked out of the room. When she returned, she was holding something familiar. A blue folder. It wasn't new anymore. The edges were worn. The surface slightly faded. But it was intact, preserved, with a care that suggested it held something far more valuable than paper. Diane's eyes flickered toward it. Uncertain. Iris sat down again and opened it. You said this is about family, Iris began, her voice calm, not cold, not emotional, just steady. So, let's talk about family. She pulled out the first document. A wedding invitation. Returned unopened. Another. A letter I wrote to tell you I was pregnant. Also returned. Another. Photos of Liam and Sophie when they were born. You didn't return these. You just ignored them. Diane shifted slightly in her seat. Iris continued. 1, 2, 3. She counted softly, placing each piece on the table like evidence in a trial that had been waiting years to begin. 29? She looked up. 29 moments where I reached out. 29 times you chose silence. Diane's composure cracked not dramatically, but enough. That was different, she said quickly. You made choices I did. Iris interrupted gently. And so did you? The room fell silent again. But this time it was heavier, not empty. Final? You're asking me for $925,000. Iris continued, her voice still even. But what you're really asking is for me to forget 29 moments where you decided I wasn't your daughter. Diane opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out, because there was no argument left that didn't sound like an excuse. Iris closed the blue folder. I built my life without you, she said quietly. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. And the people who stood by me when I had nothing, they are my family. Her eyes didn't harden. They didn't soften either. They simply held the truth. I don't owe you anything. It wasn't said with anger, which somehow made it stronger. Diane stood up slowly, her grip tightening around the untouched folder she had brought. For a brief moment, it looked like she might say something, anything to shift the outcome. But there was nothing left to say, so she walked out. And this time, no one stopped her. Days passed, then weeks, and for the first time in years, the silence that followed didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like closure. Until one evening, Iris's phone rang. Kenneth. She stared at the name for a long moment before answering. His voice, when it came through, was different. Not authoritative, not distant, just older. Iris, he said, and the way he spoke her name carried something unfamiliar. I was wrong. No conditions, no demands. Just that. I should have called years ago, he continued. I should have been there. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed you to hear that. Iris didn't respond immediately, because this was new. Not strategy, not timing, just regret. I can't fix what I did. Kenneth added quietly, but if there's any way to start again, even a little, I'll wait. Iris closed her eyes briefly, not to escape, but to think. When she spoke, her voice was careful. We can talk, she said, slowly. No money. No expectations. Just conversation. Kenneth exhaled, almost like he had been holding his breath for years. Thank you, he whispered. When the call ended, Marcus looked at her, not questioning, just present as always. You okay? He asked. Iris nodded. I think, she said softly, this is what choosing yourself actually looks like. She glanced at the blue folder resting on the shelf across the room. It was no longer something she needed to carry. It was something she had survived. And for the first time, it felt like the past no longer had a price.